Please hit that like button if you believe in the power of second chances, even after years of regret. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more tales that reveal the true meaning of family. Florence burned in golden hues that sunset, as if the sky had, on a whim, decided to slowly set the day ablaze. The shadows of ancient cypresses danced on the hot cobblestones of the narrow Oltrarno streets, while the deep roar of a black Porsche broke the sonic monotony with the brutal elegance of a silent predator. It glided like a metallic whisper, powerful yet contained, exactly like him. Exactly like Alexander. Alex Thorne held the steering wheel with one hand, his fingers firm, like someone who controls not just a car, but an entire life built on control and precision. His face, half shadowed by dark glasses, reflected in the rearview mirror with the coldness of one who learned to silence all internal noise in the name of well-calculated ambition. The Swiss watch shone on his wrist like a tattoo of power. Nothing about his appearance suggested accessibility. Everything screamed untouchable. The radio was off. He didn't need music. The engine's roar was enough, as if it were an extension of his own soul, programmed to push forward, without emotional curves, without detours, without relapses. Only that day, in that old neighborhood where time seemed to run slower, there was something different in the air, a kind of silent discomfort he couldn't name, a subtle tremor in his stomach that he didn't even dare to recognize as a premonition. As he drove past the open windows of cafes and the flower-filled balconies of centuries-old buildings, Alex thought about numbers, about mergers, about deals with Arab investors. His phone vibrated inside his jacket pocket, but he didn't answer. For the first time in days, he ignored it. There was something in the city's contours that pulled him out of logic, as if he were, unintentionally, entering forbidden territory. The Porsche slowed in front of a narrow curve, nestled between two colorful, peeling facades. The warm wind blew through the open window, bringing a familiar scent. Cotton candy mixed with jasmine. Alex frowned. His foot hesitated on the accelerator for a fraction of a second. Then he saw them. Two children, a boy and a girl, standing hand in hand in front of a colorful candy stall. Their brown hair glowed in the setting sun, and their eyes, identical to his own. Alex felt the impact in his chest before he was even aware of what he was seeing. The car screeched to a halt, half blocking the narrow street, almost brushing the sidewalk. He didn't even notice the horn honking behind him. The entire world seemed to contract into a single image. The children, side by side, laughing, innocent, with the same sparkle in their eyes that he saw every day looking in the mirror. Only there, in the M, there was something he never had. There was a lightness. And then, behind the M, Eleanor, the woman he swore to forget. The same one who destroyed him without even a scream. Her silence was the loudest sound he ever heard. And now, there, as if pulled from a nightmare into the real world, she was in front of him again. Eleanor. She wore a light white dress that danced in the wind. Her hair was tied up high on her head, with a few loose strands that insisted on brushing her lips. But it was her eyes that tore Alex apart inside. There was no hatred there, no surprise, only recognition. As if time had not passed, as if no plane had taken off that night, as if he were still the man who looked at her with hunger and fear at the same time. Alex opened the car door without thinking. Pedestrians walked past him like shadows. The sounds of the city disappeared. Only she existed. And they? The crushing absence of 5 years screaming between them. Eleanor looked down. For a second, She touched the simple necklace at her throat, a small, almost imperceptible gesture, but one he knew well. It was what she did when she felt exposed. Vulnerable. Alex tried to say something, but his throat seemed made of stone. The children turned. The little girl pointed curiously at him. "Mommy, who is that man?" Eleanor didn't reply. She just squeezed her daughter's hand tightly. But her eyes pleaded for silence, distance, time he no longer had. He took a step, and she retreated. Everything he thought he had buried, the nostalgia, the desire, the guilt, revealed itself in his chest like a wounded animal. Every choice he made, every night he spent alone, convinced he had done the right thing. Everything collapsed there, under the Andalusian sun, as if the universe had finally decided to collect its debt. The people around him continued with their lives. A couple argued on the opposite corner of the piazza. A vendor advertised fresh fruit with a strong accent. A dog barked at a pigeon. But for Alex, only that instant existed. Static, unbearable, inescapable. His hands trembled. Eleanor looked at her children. Her eyes shone with a contained, ancient pain. Alex knew that look. It was the look of one who loved and lost, of one who hadn't forgotten, though she tried. He wanted to say her name. He wanted to ask if she was okay, if she was happy, if she missed him. But he only managed to whisper, almost voiceless, "Eleanor." She raised her face, firm, and for a moment, just for a moment, it seemed she was going to smile. But she didn't smile. She simply turned her body, guiding the children away. Each step she took was a blow to his stomach. And when they disappeared behind the piazza wall, Alex stood there, motionless, his gaze lost in the void. The roar of the Porsche's engine still vibrated behind him, like a distant memory of who he used to be. Only then did he realize he had been holding his breath. And he exhaled slowly, like someone bleeding internally without a sound. The city resumed its movement around him, but he didn't move, because in a single second, everything he had built became smaller than what he had just lost. Again. What do you think is going through Eleanor's mind as she walks away? What would be the hardest part of explaining this encounter to her children? Share your thoughts in the comments. Crossing the piazza with steps too firm for a heart so broken, Eleanor held her children's hands like someone holding back a dam about to burst. The streets of Florence, once her allies in silence and rebirth, now seemed to repeat his name on every old wall, in every shadow cast on the cobblestones. The smell of cotton candy clung to her skin like an emotional memory. Her daughter's hand squeezed hers, but Eleanor barely felt it. Everything inside her was numb. She knew it might happen someday, but not like this. Not with her children's eyes so wide, not with that look from him, not when she had already learned to breathe again. They arrived at the small street door of the old building. Eleanor tapped the code into the intercom with trembling fingers. The gate creaked open, and she hurried up the stairs, as if she could escape time. His gaze. The past. They entered the small apartment on the 3rd floor, cozy, tidy, with books piled where paintings should be, and toys hidden in colorful boxes under the kitchen table. She knelt in front of the children in the hallway. "Let's go change our clothes, okay?" She forced a smile to disguise her internal collapse. The two obeyed without protest. She had raised them that way, with firm gentleness, with routine, with clear boundaries, with the delicacy of one who knew she would have to be mother and father, voice and refuge, harbor and shield. When she was alone, Eleanor leaned against the wall, her face pale, her eyes fixed on the floor. That second when she saw him again wouldn't leave her mind. His eyes, the little ones, those eyes. She had seen them. She knew instantly. The same dark brown, the same subtle curve at the corner of the eyelids. She didn't need any proof. It wasn't doubt. It was a cruel certainty. Eleanor had children. She had his children. And she hadn't told him anything. Her daughter's question, that innocent, direct question, with brown eyes identical to his, pierced her chest like a dry lightning bolt. Who is that man looking at you like that? Eleanor put her hand on her belly, where they once grew, where memory still burned as if time, in truth, had not passed. There were so many things she had to swallow to move on. Starting with London. The decision to leave was anything but simple. She was 5 months pregnant when she packed her suitcase. Alone. No shouts, no letters, just the sound of her own breathing and the dull pain of one who understood she would not be chosen. Alex had been clear with his absence. He was focused on becoming who he needed to be. And she didn't fit into that plan. Eleanor left a stable job, a limited support network, a neighborhood where everyone knew her by name, and she left. She arrived in Florence with no promises or certainties, her fingers clutching the steering wheel of the rented car, her eyes too misty to read the road signs. She spent the first night at a university friend's house, sleeping sitting up, afraid of inconveniencing them if she took up too much space. Then she found a small, furnished studio in the Oltrarno neighborhood, where the rent was cheaper and the street noise drowned out her midnight sobs. She had the twins at the public hospital, accompanied by a kind nurse who held her hand during contractions. No family, no Alex, no father's name on the admission form. Then came the sleepless nights, the alternating cries, the hastily prepared bottles, the diapers changed with one hand, the baths given with eyes burning from exhaustion. But Eleanor didn't complain. She couldn't. She was alive, and so were they. She got a job. Tutoring school children, rich kids who needed English, math, patience. Sometimes she worked shifts in bookstores where the smell of new pages made her forget for an instant that the world could be cruel. She read to her children every night, even when she was exhausted. Stories with dragons and good witches, because she wanted them to grow up believing that not all endings have to be tragic. Time passed, but Alex didn't. Not in her thoughts, not in her children's eyes. And that's why she never told them. Not out of fear of retaliation, not out of wounded pride, but because, even after everything, she still loved him. And because of that, she didn't trust him to take care of the children he didn't even know he had. Too much love, she learned, can be a prison. And Alex, with his obsession with success, with independence, with control, would be a golden cell that would destroy what she most needed to protect, their childhood, their right to grow up whole, without the shadow of an absent father feigning presence. Eleanor knew that if she revealed who he was, she would open a door of no return. Alex would have rights. He would have demands. He would bring his world of luxury and pressure into the simple, light routine she fought so hard to preserve. No, she couldn't allow it. So she kept silent. Keeping silent is also loving. That's what she repeated to herself every time one of them asked why they didn't have a daddy, or when their eyes shone when they saw commercials with complete families, or when, falling asleep, the boy asked her to do the deep voice of the lion, as if trying to invent a masculine figure to protect him. That night, after the encounter, Eleanor took a long time to move. She stood in the kitchen, a cup of tea in her hands, and her face turned towards the open window. The city outside continued as always. Horns, conversations, laughter, the distant smell of baking bread. But inside her, something had shifted, an underground earthquake that cracked everything that seemed stable. The children were asleep. She kissed their foreheads, pulled up their blankets, adjusted their pillows. She observed their faces as one memorizes details before something changes. Because she knew. Alex had seen her, and he had seen them. And knowing him as she did, she knew it wouldn't end there. She sat on the edge of the bed. The fan spun on the ceiling, pushing the warm air of a summer that refused to end. Eleanor closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She tried to reclaim the woman she had become in the last 5 years. Strong, independent, resilient. But inside, she was still the girl who loved that man with eyes too dark and a soul too closed. The truth was, he never left her. Not because she still wanted him, but because he took parts of her that she could never replace. The next morning, the children ran to breakfast with their usual energy. Eleanor kept a smile on her face, even though her chest felt heavy. "Mommy, can we go to the piazza again?" "Why?" "Because we're going to the market, remember? We need fruit." The boy wrinkled his nose. "But I want cotton candy." Eleanor knelt between the two, smoothed the girl's hair, and gently touched the boy's chin. "Another day, I promise." Deep down, she knew they wanted more than cotton candy. They wanted answers, and she didn't know how much longer she could keep them hidden. But for now, just for now, silence remained a shield, silence remained love. Even if the past lurked on the other side of the city, in a black Porsche with too many memories in the rearview mirror. What do you think is going through Alex's mind after seeing Eleanor and the children? Do you believe he'll try to reach out again? And if so, share your predictions in the comments below. On the other side of the city, the Porsche slept, parked in a discreet hotel square. But Alex did not. Sitting on the edge of the bed, his shirt still open on his chest, his hands resting on his knees, he stared at the floor as if he could find there the answers he sought, or the ones he avoided for years. The luxurious room was just another replica of the life he had built, impersonal, comfortable, functional. No stories on the walls, no photos on the dresser, no past. Until now. Since the encounter in the piazza, Eleanor's image had not left his mind. But it wasn't just her. It was the eyes. The little ones. Those eyes. He had seen them. He knew instantly. The same dark brown, the same subtle curve at the corner of the eyelids. He didn't need any proof. It wasn't a doubt. It was a cruel certainty. Eleanor had children. She had his children. And she hadn't told him anything. That burned. It burned inside him in a way he didn't know was possible. But more than rage, there was pain. A silent, deep, hollow pain. As if someone had ripped 5 years from him with bare hands. Alex's mind returned to the past without permission. The last night they saw each other. The smell of her skin. The way she slept with her fingers intertwined with the pillow. How she looked at him in silence when he talked too much about business, trying to understand who he was behind the armor. She never demanded what he didn't give. She just suffered in silence. And he, at the time, believed that was mature love, not to demand. But now he understood. She didn't demand because she already knew he wouldn't give. On his cell phone, her name was still saved. Eleanor, do not call. A ridiculous reminder he himself wrote to protect himself, not to give in when he missed her. When loneliness struck him in the early hours after a meeting in Dubai or a cold dinner in New York. Do not call. Never. But now he wanted more than to call. He wanted to know. He needed to understand. He needed to look her in the eyes and listen to her, even if it hurt. The next afternoon he went. He didn't warn her. He just went. He wore a dark gray shirt, no jacket, no watch. He wanted to look less like who he was, more like who he once was. He crossed the same piazza, felt the same smell, heard the same childish noise of the impromptu weekend market. She was there. Eleanor, with her hair loose this time, sitting on a wooden bench under the shade of a tree. She was reading a book, while the children played around her. Simple, serene, an image that hurt him with its beauty. Alex stopped a few steps away. His heart pounded, out of rhythm. He didn't know how to start, how to invade a world that had clearly learned to carry on without him. She saw him. She showed no surprise, no anger. She just closed the book, left it on her lap, and looked at him with calm but attentive eyes. "It's not the time, Alex," she said, before he could say anything. He approached anyway, his voice restrained, his body leaning forward, like someone asking permission with their presence. "Eleanor, just listen to me. I'm not here to demand anything." "But you came, didn't you?" She averted her gaze for a second. The children ran after a kite, laughing loudly. That hurt him in a way he couldn't name. "I just want to know." His voice broke, and he swallowed it before it sounded pathetic. "Why?" Eleanor kept her breathing steady, but her fingers squeezed the book tighter. She thought about lying. She thought about screaming, but she did neither. "Because you weren't ready, Alex. And you decided that for me?" "I decided it for myself. For them. They're mine." She laughed. Low, humorless. "Do you really need to ask?" Alex sat down beside her. Not too close. Not too far. "I wouldn't have run away." "No. You ran from me even before you knew. Do you really think if I had told you then, you would have left everything? Your contracts? Your goals? You couldn't even stand to sleep 2 nights in the same country." He looked down. "I would have done what I could, but not what was necessary." The words hung in the air like something sharp. Alex felt the blow. He didn't answer. "Did you love me?" Eleanor looked at him. For a few seconds, she just looked at him, until she answered with a truth that hurt more than a scream. "I loved you so much. I chose silence so I wouldn't end up hating you later." He didn't blink. His jaw clenched, his chest rising and falling slowly. That dismantled everything he thought he knew about her, about himself, about what they had. "And now? Now I love them, and that's enough for me." Alex looked at his children, still not daring to call them that. They ran carelessly, alive, full of joy. It seemed almost unfair to him, because inside him there was war, fury, remorse, a stuck love that no longer knew how to surrender. "Do you hate me?" Eleanor smiled sideways. "I don't hate you, Alex, but I don't trust you. And what moves me today isn't what I feel. It's what they need. And they don't need me?" She hesitated. That was the question she asked herself every night. "Maybe. But they don't need the man you were. And I don't know if you've changed, or if you're just scared." He swallowed. He didn't deny it. "I am." She nodded. Not with pity, with clarity. "Then be honest. With yourself. With them. Don't force anything. Don't try to make up for lost time. Time can't be made up, Alex. Time is just lived." He ran his hand through his hair, nervous, frustrated. He wanted to hug her, to apologize, to cry. But none of that was allowed. "Can I see them?" "Not today." "And tomorrow?" She took a deep breath. "It depends. On you. I'm willing, Alex, to do the right thing. For them. For you. If still..." She raised her hand, interrupting him. "Don't love me now, Alex. Love me when you're capable of losing control for someone other than yourself. Love me when you can stop running and learn to stay." He remained silent. Her words were like salt in an open wound. And yet he understood them. He needed to hear them. He needed them to hurt. Eleanor stood up. She called the children with a soft whistle. Alex watched them run towards her, hugging her legs with loose laughter. She looked at him one more time, her eyes calm, firm. "The pain you feel now, I felt for months, but I survived. Now it's your turn." And she left, with her children, with the dignity of one who didn't give in to impulse, and with the certainty that love, when it survives abandonment, needs to learn to be reborn with patience, or it dies trying to return to the past. What do you think is the right thing for Alex to do? Can he truly change? And do you think Eleanor will eventually trust him? Share your thoughts in the comments. That afternoon dragged the sky in an opaque tone when Eleanor arrived at the apartment, with the children chattering disjointed stories of leaves, ants, and a kite caught in the branch of a jacaranda tree. She listened to them outwardly, but inwardly, a silent battle raged, a clash between the firmness she had shown in front of Alex and the emotional torrent that now threatened to overflow. She double-locked the door, as if she could also lock away her thoughts. The twins ran to their room and began scattering toys on the floor as if the world outside hadn't changed. As if that man, the man who was not a stranger, but also not apart, remained just another lost face in the crowd. The next day, she decided to seek help. Lucy was the only person who knew enough to hate Alex without needing explanations. Eleanor hesitated before ringing the doorbell of her sister's apartment in the city center, an old renovated house with plants hanging from the windows and that aroma of freshly brewed coffee that Lucy cultivated as part of her identity. When the door opened, Lucy frowned, already knowing. Eleanor didn't have to say anything. "He showed up, didn't he?" Eleanor looked down, exhausted. "He showed up." Lucy stepped aside, letting her in. They sat in the kitchen. The kettle hissed in the background, but the silence between them was louder. Lucy poured the tea without asking and looked at her sister like someone waiting for a confession. What does he want? To know, to understand, to be present. Lucy let out a dry laugh. "Alex Thorne doesn't know how to be present, Eleanor. He knows how to arrive. He knows how to dominate, but not how to stay." "I know. And yet you let him get close?" "No, he found me, in the piazza, by chance." Lucy crossed her arms, leaning on the doorway. "And now?" Eleanor took a sip of tea, her eyes glassy. "Now I don't know." Her sister approached and placed a hand on her shoulder. "I love you, Elle, but you have to protect the children, and protect yourself too. He might want to redeem himself now, but do you remember what he was like? He always left. It was always like that." Eleanor held back her tears with clenched teeth. She no longer knew if Lucy's anger was a shield or a mirror of the pain she herself pretended not to have. "They've started asking questions. They feel something. I don't know how, but they feel it." "What did they say?" "That he has the same voice as the dragon I imitate in stories." Lucy recoiled. That disarmed her in a way no adult phrase could. Why was it real? Why was it pure? Why was it undeniable? "They know," she murmured. Eleanor nodded. "And I don't know how much longer I can keep lying." Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Alex tried to digest everything with the help of the only man who knew his most distorted version, Arthur. They sat in a discreet bar, away from the eyes of the corporate world, a place with scratched wooden floors and tables still etched with names of teenage lovers. Arthur arrived late, as always, but with the expression of one who knew it wasn't worth feigning surprise. So, it's true? Alex, already on his third beer, stared at the glass like someone looking into an abyss. They're mine. And she never told you anything? Never. And you, Alex, would you have done anything differently? The question carried no reproach, but Alex felt it like a blade. He closed his eyes, swallowed his rage. I don't know, but I would have liked to have the opportunity. Arthur leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. And now what do you want? I want to know them. I want them to know they weren't rejected. But you rejected him, even if you didn't know it. You left, Alex. You disappeared. You made your decision. Eleanor, she built a whole life with the work you left behind. I know, and yet you want to enter that life as if it were a right? It's not a right. It's a need. Arthur let out a heavy sigh. Are you willing to not be loved? What? The children. They might not want you, or they might love you in a way that hurts. And Eleanor, you know she won't forgive you easily. Alex ran a hand over his face, exhausted. I don't want her forgiveness. I want her respect. I want her gaze. Even if it's no longer one of love. Arthur stood up. Then go slowly, because any misstep and you'll lose more than you already have. Days later, life continued its strange, disjointed rhythm. Eleanor, at the children's insistence, took them to the piazza again. She tried to avoid the same paths, but deep down, she knew he might be there. And he was. Alex, sitting on a bench with a bag of children's books on his lap, pretended not to see them, but his whole body reacted to the sound of approaching little footsteps. Eleanor walked ahead and, for the first time, did not push him away with her gaze. Just 5 minutes. He nodded, speechless. The children stopped in front of him. They didn't know if they could touch him, but they didn't need permission to observe. Hello, said the little girl. Hello, Alex replied, his voice almost hoarse. The boy looked at the books. What do you have there? Alex pulled out a copy and showed it. The Dragon with Sad Eyes, a book he had specifically printed, based on a story Eleanor used to tell them. He remembered every detail. Mommy knows that story, said the little girl. I know. Alex smiled sincerely. Eleanor watched from afar, her face tense. But something inside her loosened from distrust. It wasn't surrender. It was surprise. The girl tugged at her sleeve. Can you do the dragon's voice? Alex hesitated, and he did it. Deep, drawn out, with that almost comical and terrifying tone all at once. The children's eyes widened. Laughter was immediate. Just like Mommy! Eleanor felt the world spin. That broke her inside, not because of the talent, but because of the connection, because of a bond she had tried to hide, and that now screamed through the spontaneity of her own children. The girl ran to her. Mommy, why does he do the dragon's voice just like you? Eleanor took a deep breath, her heart sinking in her chest. She looked at Alex, and for the first time, there was no judgment in her gaze, only a beginning, fragile, but inevitable. Do you think Eleanor is finally ready to let Alex into their lives? What does this moment signify for their future as a family? Share your thoughts below. Alex walked back to the hotel, like someone dragging a body that no longer belonged to him. Every step was an effort not to look back, not to run to Eleanor, kneel in the middle of the piazza, and beg for the time he let slip through his fingers like sand. The children's laughter still echoed in his head, that high-pitched, carefree laughter that hurt more than any silence. It was a pure laugh, and therefore impossible to buy. In the elevator, he faced his own reflection in the mirror and didn't recognize himself. The features were there, the dark eyes, the strong jawline, the dress shirt with its collar unbuttoned. But something inside him had broken. A deep misalignment, as if he had spent years holding an empire on foundations that now trembled with the simple touch of two children's voices and a woman who never left his heart. He entered the room and left his jacket on the armchair. His cell phone vibrated on the bedside table, but he didn't even look at it. It was the corporate world calling. Numbers, mergers, quarterly goals, all so distant now that it seemed like a parallel life. Alex sat on the edge of the bed, hunched over, his elbows on his knees, his hands covering his face. Inside, the man was in ruins. He pulled a worn leather backpack from the corner of the closet and brought it to the bed. Inside, among documents and contracts, there was a simple manila folder with colorful drawings he had kept for years. They weren't from his children. They were from at-risk children, social projects he had donated money to, but never time. Drawings sent in gratitude for things he didn't even remember signing. He opened the first one. It was a scribble of a house with a huge sun and a stick-figure family, all smiling. That broke him. He dropped the drawing and stood up abruptly, pacing the room like a caged animal. He went to the window and opened it roughly, letting in the night air. The city lights shone outside, but inside him, everything was dim. 5 years. 5 years without seeing the first step, the first tooth, the first fever, without hearing the first daddy, because he never existed. He missed the first scribbled notebook, the first fear of the dark, the first, "I don't want to sleep yet," said with half-closed eyes. He lost everything. And for what? For deadlines, for shareholders, for a position that didn't hug him at the end of the day. He sat on the floor, his back to the bed, his head resting against the wall, his eyes fixed on nothing, his breathing ragged. On the bedside table, a sealed envelope watched him like a reminder. It was a contract that would take him back to New York the following week. A new position, higher, farther. He tore it up, without thinking, without regret. Then he stood up, went to the mini fridge, opened a small bottle of whiskey, but didn't drink. He just held it. He thought about the days when that drink was the perfect anesthetic. But now, not even that worked. In the early morning, it started to rain. Alex stood by the window, his fingers touching the glass as if he wanted to break through it. He thought of her, of Eleanor, of her strength, of her firm gaze, of the way she stood, carrying an entire world in her arms. He thought of how much she loved him in silence, and how much he didn't deserve it. That thought pushed him to the limit, and he collapsed. On the cold floor of the room, he cried as he had never cried before. A raw, unrestrained, shameless sob. The cry of a man who finally understood the price of absence. In the middle of the night, Eleanor woke up with a start. She didn't know why. Something inside her simply tensed. A hunch. She went to the kitchen, got a glass of water. She sat at the table, but the uneasiness wouldn't pass. She picked up her cell phone, hesitated for a few seconds, and then texted Lucy. "Do you know which hotel he's at?" The answer came in seconds. "Hotel Grand Plaza." "Why?" Eleanor was already putting on her shoes. She didn't take a coat, no purse. She left with a heavy heart, as if sensing that that night could not end in silence. She took a taxi and asked to go fast. The driver, seeing her nervous, sped up without asking questions. At the hotel, she went up without announcing herself. She knew the room number. She walked down the hallway with restrained steps. The sound of her own heartbeat deafened her. When she stopped in front of the door, she didn't knock immediately. She took a deep breath, and then she knocked. Nothing. Once more. Silence. She turned the doorknob. It was unlocked. Eleanor gently pushed the door open. The dim light from the nightstand illuminated the interior. And there, on the floor, was Alex. Lying down, his eyes open, swollen, his hands crossed over his chest, as if trying to contain an earthquake. She approached without saying anything, and he, seeing her, didn't move. He just blinked with difficulty. "Eleanor," he said, as if saying a prayer. She crouched in front of him. He was trembling. "Are you okay?" He wanted to say yes, but he didn't lie. "No, I don't think so." "Why didn't you call me? Why didn't I deserve it?" She closed her eyes, feeling the impact. The words hurt because they were true. "I thought you had already left. I was going to. But I couldn't. I don't know how to live that way anymore. And like this? I don't know either." Silence. Eleanor sat beside him, leaning against the wall. They stayed like that for long minutes. Neither of them was in a hurry. Neither knew what came next. But there, in that rainy dawn, the past finally knelt before the present. "Did you cry?" she asked in a whisper. "I cried for everything I didn't cry for in 5 years." She took a deep breath, her eyes shining. "I cried too, but always alone. Do you forgive me? Not yet, but you came, because I still care." He slowly turned his face towards her. "And do you still love me?" She took a moment to answer. And when she did, it wasn't with words. It was with her hand, extended over his. A touch. Simple. But with a weight that no contract, no word, no promise could equal. It was the beginning of something that didn't yet have a name. But for the first time, both were in the same time, in the same pain, and perhaps in the same hope. What a powerful, raw moment. Do you believe Alex and Eleanor can truly build a future together after so much pain and unspoken history? What would be the biggest obstacle for them now? Share your thoughts below. The July sun was gaining strength over Florence, painting the facades with a vibrant light that danced between the balconies and reflected in the puddles left by a quick rain the night before. Eleanor watched from the kitchen window as her children ran around the building's inner courtyard, laughing with a freedom she envied. There were days when their simple happiness filled her, and others, like this one, when she felt a distance, as if life was moving forward, but her heart was still stranded in the past. Since the night at the hotel, something had changed. It wasn't a reconciliation. It wasn't a new beginning. It was a gesture, small but immense. A touch between two hands tired of fighting, as if to say, "I see you." Alex asked for nothing, nor did he promise. But the next day, he showed up. With books. No fanfare, no flowers, no speeches. Eleanor saw him arrive at the gate with a light backpack on his shoulder and a new expression on his face, a mix of insecurity and courage she had never seen in him. The children noticed him first. Their eyes lit up with curiosity. And perhaps, without knowing who he really was, they instinctively recognized something in him that attracted them. Alex knelt down to their height, opened his backpack, and took out 2 illustrated books. One about lost whales, another about siblings who got lost in the forest and needed to trust each other to return. Eleanor watched from the balcony. She waited for the impulse to intervene, but it didn't come. "Do you want me to read?" he asked, offering the book as one offers shared territory. Both nodded, sitting in the shade of a plane tree, legs crossed, eyes attentive. Alex read, simply, but with intention. He changed the characters' voices. He made dramatic pauses. And, at one point, the two began to laugh. Eleanor didn't know where to hide the smile that escaped her. It was the sound of presence, something she had learned to give up, and that now returned like soft music from a good memory. In the days that followed, Alex returned. He brought fruit, sometimes small toys, but never in excess, never as an exchange. He didn't try to buy affection. he only offered time. He sat on the floor with them. He listened about dinosaurs, night fears, wars between ants, and superpowers that changed the color of the sky. When he didn't know what to say, he simply listened. And when the children wanted to run, he ran with them, even if his suit got dirty. Eleanor observed him from a distance. She tried not to get involved, but it was impossible to ignore the transformation unfolding before her. He wasn't a man trying to salvage the past. He was someone trying to exist, truly, in the present. There was a day when he arrived earlier than usual. Eleanor had gone out to buy bread, and upon returning, she found him crouched in the courtyard, next to her son's old blue bicycle. The handlebars twisted, the pedal loose, the seat worn. Alex was sweaty, his hands covered in grease, and he hummed a tune without lyrics. The boy watched him in silence, with admiration, as if seeing a magician fix something broken with spells. Eleanor approached without him immediately noticing her. "Why are you doing all this, Alex?" He looked up. The light hit him full on, revealing an honest weariness, a contained sparkle. "Because I want to be someone in their lives. Not for me. For them. For you." The raw sincerity of the answer fell on her like a sweet blow. There was no plea, no demand, only surrender. She didn't reply, but she also didn't retreat. She began to offer him coffee when he arrived. Then she allowed him to come into the apartment to read stories in the living room. The children called him by his name, and although they still didn't know exactly who he was, the bond was visible. They waited for him. They sought his voice, his hands, his silences. One night, Eleanor came out of the kitchen and found them asleep on the sofa, one on each side, hugging him as if they already knew what blood never needed to explain. Alex, still awake, saw her and wanted to get up, but she gestured with her hand. "Stay." He nodded. He leaned his head back on the sofa, and for the first time in years, he felt peace. Neighbors began to comment. A new man, always present, always with the children. Lucy found out and called Eleanor. "Is he there?" "He is. And he's quiet." "Is he doing?" "Not asking." Lucy didn't reply, but she also didn't insist. One rainy, muggy Friday, Eleanor had to leave urgently to solve a problem at the school where she taught. Alex was there. She looked at him, with the children still asleep, and said, "Can you stay with them for an hour?" "Of course." When she returned, she found the table covered with drawings, animals, castles, planets, and the three of them sitting on the floor, smiling, covered in tempera paint up to their elbows. The living room was chaos, but the air was light, and she smiled, a complete smile. That night, as she washed the dishes, Eleanor paused in front of the window. The wind blew warm, the city breathed, and inside her, something began to settle. It wasn't acceptance, nor forgiveness. It was a new way of living together, a possibility, a space between the love of the past and the life she built alone. Alex now existed within that, not with promises, but with presence. And sometimes that was all a tired heart needed. Not words, but someone who would simply stay. What do you think is the true meaning of the silence between Eleanor and Alex as they rebuild their relationship? How do you feel about Lucy's quiet observation of Alex's transformation? Share your thoughts below. Summer in Florence stretched through the days with the slowness of moments that matter. The heat no longer bothered as much, perhaps because there was now a new lightness in the routine. Alex was no longer a visitor. Eleanor didn't call him that, not even to herself. He simply was there. And that, after all, was what surprised her most. Not that he had returned, but that he had decided to stay. The twins' birthday was approaching. 7 years old. Eleanor sometimes found herself stopping in front of their small clothes, trying to understand how time had passed so quickly. How it was possible that those 2 heartbeats she once carried inside her now ran through the house laughing loudly, knowing how to read, think, ask difficult questions. She prepared the party with the dedication of someone who needs to prove to herself that she can still handle everything. But she could no longer pretend she could do it alone. That Tuesday, Alex arrived with a small plastic truck in his hand and 2 bags full of balloons. Eleanor laughed when she saw him. Overboard. Just a little. You'll have to inflate them all. Well deserved. It was the first time in months that she had lightly teased him, and he knew it, because her laughter wasn't automatic or polite. It was involuntary, and he received it as a gift. During the week, he helped with the shopping, picked up the invitations from the printer, drew colorful garlands with their names with the children. He didn't ask to be called Daddy. He didn't try to force intimacy. He just served. He carried bags, organized toys, hung banners with tape. When the children asked him if he would come to the party, he replied, "If you want me to." "We do." On Saturday, he arrived before 9 a.m. Eleanor's hair was still damp and her eyes were tired. But when she saw him, something settled inside her. He brought the cake. And not just any cake. It was the same one she prepared every year, with chocolate frosting, colorful sprinkles, shaped like a rocket, but made by him. Or almost. She knew just by looking at it that he had help. And that made it even more real. They spent the morning organizing the tables in the building's courtyard. Lucy appeared later with suspicious eyes, but said nothing. She just observed. Alex greeted her respectfully and didn't try to force conversation. She, in turn, busied herself with the juices. The children were the stars of the day, as they should be. They greeted their schoolmates, jumped, ran, shouted. But Eleanor noticed something in them, a constant attention towards Alex, a gaze that sought him out, a body that approached him, a presence that was no longer fleeting. When one of them fell and scraped his knee, it was to him he ran. And he knew what to do. He knelt. He gently blew. He made an improvised bandage with a handkerchief from his pocket. Then he told a story about astronauts who fell and got hurt, but didn't give up. The boy listened with fixed eyes, and he smiled. As dusk fell, Eleanor stepped back a little. She sat in a chair near the balcony, observing everything. The mess, the sounds, the smells, the lights that began to flicker in garlands hung on the wall. Alex played with the children with a rope and 2 paper hats. They laughed as if he had always been there, as if that 7-year absence didn't exist. And, in a way, at that moment, it didn't. Eleanor allowed herself to see, not the man who left her, but the man who stayed. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the children, with eyes of someone who understood, who felt, who knew he couldn't recover what was unlived, but who chose to be there for what could still be. When the courtyard lights began to come on, and the guests started to leave, Eleanor approached him. The children were still chasing half-deflated balloons. Alex calmly collected plastic plates. She approached slowly. There was no rush. There was maturity. He saw her and smiled with that gaze that didn't plead, didn't expect. It only gave thanks. She moved closer. She stopped beside him. And, without saying a word, she placed her hand on his. It was a simple gesture. Neither of them moved. But there, in that light, serene contact, there was a pact that needed no name, no promises. It was a pact of presence, of respect, of possible love. Not the kind that begins with vows, but the kind that is built with what remains after everything has failed. And Eleanor knew in that instant that perhaps there was no longer enough pain to prevent what could blossom from there. Because what really matters is not who returned, it's who chose to stay. What a profoundly moving moment. What do you think this silent pact truly signifies for Eleanor and Alex? How has the journey transformed them individually? Share your insights in the comments. Time didn't heal everything, but it taught them to live with the scars as part of the beauty. Months turned into years. The routine, once built on silences and fears, now wove itself with crossing voices at breakfast, laughter at the dinner table, and small messages taped to the refrigerator door. The children grew up surrounded by love, a real, imperfect, but complete love. They knew their father wasn't always there, but that he chose to be there when it mattered most. And that, for them, was enough. Eleanor remained strong, with that gaze that both saved and disarmed. Alex learned to stop, to stay, to listen. He stopped being the man who pursued conquests and became the man who put down roots. And one day, at the end of spring, under the purple flowers falling from the jacaranda trees in Florence, they got married. It was a simple ceremony, in the courtyard of the building where everything had begun again. Close friends, neighbors, Lucy with tears in her eyes, and a smile that only time could return. Arthur proposed a clumsy but sincere toast, and the children, with combed hair and new shoes, carried the rings, walking between the chairs, their eyes shining with pride. Alex never took his eyes off Eleanor. She walked slowly, dressed in white, with a shy smile and a peace drawn on her face that he had never seen before. When she stopped in front of him, they intertwined their hands, and they didn't say much. They didn't need to. The promises had already been made in the respected silences, in the sleepless nights due to the children's fevers, in the coffees shared on ordinary mornings, in the times one stayed when the other needed air, when they fell together, when they chose to get up, slowly. That day they didn't seal a fairy tale. They sealed something rarer, a family built not on what they dreamed of at the beginning, but on what they chose to be, for each other, in the end. And from then on, they were simply that, a family, strong, present, happy. This powerful story teaches us that true love and family are not defined by a perfect past, but by the courage to confront mistakes, the humility to change, and the unwavering commitment to be present. Alex's journey highlights that material success is meaningless without genuine connection and emotional fulfillment, while Eleanor's resilience shows that dignity and self-worth can be rebuilt even after deep abandonment. Ultimately, the narrative demonstrates that forgiveness is a process, and the strongest bonds are forged not in ideal circumstances, but through shared struggles, vulnerability, and the choice to love, stay, and build a future, piece by piece. It reminds us that it's never too late to become the person you were meant to be, especially when inspired by the innocent love of children. So, did I manage to move you with this story? It was quite a journey, wasn't it? From heartbreak to true love, through a lot of growth and overcoming challenges. If you've made it this far, leave a like to show me you enjoyed it, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? What part moved you the most? Do you have any suggestions for the next story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories of love and overcoming. And share it with that friend who also loves a story that touches the heart. Thank you very much for joining the journey of Alice and Ethan. See you next time.